Mas Brian. Mount Almer. Is Miss Alda here? Mount Almer, is Miss Alda ready?
The Arafura and Timor Seas region, or ATS, is unique in terms of its ecology, geography, and socio-political structure. It is rich in resources and home to a vast array of natural wonders. Shared by Australia, Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, and Timor-Leste, this fertile corridor of tropical water connects the Pacific and Indian Oceans. This area provides the peoples of many nations with essential resources, while also stocking the world's oceans with biodiversity. Unfortunately, overfishing, marine and land-based pollution, loss of habitat, and the impacts of climate change create a major threat to most marine life in the region. This underlines the urgent need for a collective regional action and transboundary management of economically important fish species, critical habitats, and marine megafauna. Therefore, in 2006, the ATS Expert Forum developed and submitted a bid to the Global Environment Facility, which came to be known as the Arafura and Timor Seas Ecosystem Action Program, or ATSEA. The initial phase was officially launched in 2010 and created a regional collaboration tasked with finding sustainable solutions for problems affecting coastal and marine resources in the region. In 2019, the second phase of ATSEA, known as ATSEA-2, has been adapted to take the collaboration and coordination in the ATS region a step further through the endorsement and implementation of a 10-year vision for the ATS, known as the Strategic Action Program. It is made up of three main components. The first component focuses on strengthening the regional and national collaboration mechanism and establishing a stakeholder partnership forum to facilitate implementation of priority actions and better participatory processes. The second component focuses on developing an ecosystem approach to the fisheries management plan, strengthening the implementation of regional plan of action to combat IUU fishing, assessing marine and land-based pollution, establishing and supporting the management of marine protected areas, and developing a regional plan to enhance marine turtle protection. And the third component focuses on improving the monitoring of the ATS region and sharing knowledge gained from the project. Through the three components, ATSEA-2 aims to achieve its main objectives in the ATS to foster sustainable development in the region by improving the quality of life of its inhabitants through restoration, conservation, and sustainable management of marine coastal ecosystems for a better life.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the live webinar on mainstreaming gender and social inclusion in fishery and marine sector in the Arafura and Timor Seas. So today we have 154 participants from different countries. We have participants from Indonesia, Salamat Pagi, from Timor-Leste, Bon dia. From the Philippines, Magandang Umaga. From Papua New Guinea, Monin. From Australia, good morning. From Cambodia, Aaron Susbay, and from Japan, Ohayo gozaimasu. I wish you all good morning. So this event will run until 11:30 a.m. GMT +7. So we have real-time interpreters available for those who wish to listen in Bahasa. The feature is on the lower right button on your screen. So it's the logo globe. You can choose Bahasa and opt to mute the original audio. This webinar is currently being live streamed on YouTube, and the link will be sent on the chat box if you wish to send it to your friends or your colleagues who are currently not registered but would like to join. Throughout the webinar, you can ask or comment through the Q&A feature. The button is on the lower center of your screen. It's a Q&A button, and anytime you can comment or ask questions through there. So this webinar was organized by the United Nations Development Programme's Global Marine Commodities Project, or GMC, and the Arafura and Timor Seas Ecosystem Approach Program, or ATSI-2, which is funded by the Global Environmental Facility, GEF, and implemented by the UNDP. So this is the second of a series of collaborations that will culminate in the East Asian Seas Congress on December 1 and 2 this year. So this event is also in celebration of the United Nations World Oceans Day last Tuesday, the theme of which was the ocean, life, and livelihoods. So it's such a timely theme, as this event is a response to the call for a more inclusive approach to reducing vulnerability in the fishery and marine sector, and also to have greater inclusivity, which means addressing gender and inclusion issues in fisheries policy and development practices. So today we are going to discuss how gender and social inclusion lens can further be applied in the fishery sector to ensure that minorities and women's roles are not only appreciated, but they could also further participate in the development of sustainable fishery and marine resource management. So our speakers will be presenting concepts and case studies on experiences, challenges, and guidance in mainstreaming gender and inclusion in fishery and marine sector. To open this webinar is Ms. Yayan Hikmayani from Indonesia. Ms. Hikmayani is a National Project Director of ATSI-2 in Indonesia. She has a master's degree in marine technology from Bogor Agricultural University, and her advocacy and passion is promoting sustainable fisheries. Let us welcome Ms. Hikmayani.
Thank you, Ms. Thea. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan. Your Excellencies, Agus Prabowo, Head of Environment Unit UNDP, Celestino da Cunha Barreta, National Director of Marine Spatial Planning, Capture and Aquatic Resources Management, Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries Timor-Leste, Ms. Alda Sousa Lemos Darosa, Senior Staff and National Directorate of Fisheries and Aquaculture, Timor-Leste, Dr. Dedi Adhuri, Indonesian Science Institute, Ms. Kusni Setiawati, Director of Kelola Laut Nusantara Indonesia, Ms. Karen Hindali, Monitoring and Evaluation Specialist at GMC Project of UNDP, Ms. Yani Wijaya, Gender Focal Point at UNDP Indonesia, and ladies and gentlemen, I would like to first thank the Almighty God, His grace and blessing. We can meet in this webinar to discuss more about mainstreaming gender and social inclusion in fishery and marine sector. The concept of gender is a distinction between the roles of men and women based on social construction. This is influenced by socio-cultural, religion, political, and economic factors. In concept of gender, there are arrangements for social relation, rules, status, responsibilities, right and obligation, authority, division of labor and relation between men and women. The concept of gender is obtained by learning dynamic depending on status and is diverse. A role that is considered a female role in one place may be considered a male role in another place. Gender issue in the early decade 1975, women only become recipients of development results, so they were considered less participatory. In 1980, discussed women in the field of education, employment opportunities, and health services. In 1985, voiced gender equality regarding the importance of women and men's participation in the development process. Women's, women's equality is measured in the Constitution and the legal framework in 1995. A review of the achievements of the Women's Decade was carried out and agreed to implement gender mainstreaming. Presidential Instruction Number 9, 200 on gender mainstreaming in national development state. The gender mainstreaming is a strategy developed to integrate gender into an integral dimension of planning, drafting, implementing, monitoring, and evaluating national development policies and programs. Gender mainstreaming in order to improve the position, role, and quality of women, as well as effort to realize gender equality and justice in family, community, nation, and state life. The SDGs mandate that sustainable development to end poverty, reduce inequality, and protect the environment should not ignore any one person, man and woman. Development without regard to gender equality will result in standardization of rules and at all dual rules, subordination, marginalization, and acts of violence against women. The unequal position between men and women has resulted in women not having access, opportunities, control, and benefits from the development carried out as a further result. The policies and programs implemented by the government also do not reduce the existing gender inequalities and gaps. The Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries is one of the ministries committed to gender mainstreaming. The working group at KKP is chaired by the Planning Bureau, while Agency for Marine and Fisheries Research and Human Resource, BRSDMKP, as one of its members. The Agency of Marine and Fisheries Research and Human Resource Science 2006 has been studying related to gender aspects in the marine and fisheries sectors. In 2002, we have started drafting a concept to build a gender development index in the marine and fisheries sector. Where are the GDI functions to measure the role of women in the economy in marine and fisheries sector? The most important thing is that we not only produce an index but also describe the low, medium, or high index from the why and how, so that it can be explained and can determine which indicators should be intervened. The index can also be used as a basis for looking at the position of women and men in the marine and fisheries sector and can be used as material for future policy evaluations. The result of the studies that have been carried out by Agency for Marine and Fisheries Research and Human Resources are intended to support the Ministry of Maritime Affairs and Fisheries Policy is as an innovation from the gender program in the Ministry of Marine Affairs in Fisheries and as an effort to remove institutional barriers and expand support for increasing individual and group access to marginalized people. The result of studies related to gender are an effort to ensure the opportunity for every individual to participate equally on obtain equal benefits, especially in the marine and fishery sector. Studies conducted by the Research Center for Marine and Fisheries Socio-Economic have described and mapped the contribution of women in the marine and fishery sector from upstream and to downstream. The involvement of women in the economy, such as buying fuel, looking for crew members, refiring nets. Women are also involved in fishing, cultivation, processing, and marketing of marine and fishery products. In addition, the research that has been carried out is aimed at how female workers in the marine and fishery sector from previously unregistered or recorded become registered. The result of the studies that have been carried out in the future will be possible to include the level of stage of development at which level of the Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries in gender mainstreaming, whether it is still in innovation, consolidation, independent, or competitive. The Agency of Marine and Fisheries Research and Human Resources commitment related to gender mainstreaming are how economic development in the marine and fisheries sector is gender inclusive, ensure the availability of gender disaggregated data in the marine and fisheries sector at macro and micro levels, support gender-related research that can support research results with performance indicator atau IQ supporting policy materials. The Gender Equality and Social Inclusion GESI is a framework for assessing gender aspect. GESI focuses on gender equality and the inclusion of marginalized groups, including persons with disabilities. The GESI approach is an approach that is used to facilitate the process of applying the perspective of gender equality and justice that not only pays attention to women and men, but also marginal groups in which there are women and men. The GESI approach is closely related to the concepts of gender equality and gender justice, as well as the concept of social inclusion. Through the GESI framework, mainstreaming is a process to integrate things that were previously considered marginal or marginalized into the entire cycle of activities and decision-making processes within an organization. Mainstreaming GESI contains a series of strategies to integrate aspects of gender equality and justice, as well as social inclusion in organizational policies, work program design, monitoring, and evaluating work programs. Mainstreaming GESI can be understood as an effort so that everyone, women and men from various social groups and especially marginalized people can be accommodated by their interests. And in the end, their rights are considered and protected by the state and stakeholders in society. Marginal people can be interpreted as a group of people whose existence is marginalized due to several factors. The definition of marginal people is very dependent on the situation and conditions. Social inclusion is an effort to remove institutional barriers and to expand support for increasing access of marginalized individuals and groups to the fulfillment of human rights as citizens. Social inclusion guarantees the opportunity for every individual to participate equality and obtain equal benefits in the socio-cultural, economic, political system at various levels in life. In the context of the Arafura and Timor Sea, a GESI framework can be used to address and remove institutional barriers and to expand support for increasing access of marginalized individuals and groups to the fulfillment of human rights, particularly in the marine and fisheries sector. How the community, both men and women, and marginalized group can access and utilize marine and fishery resources, technology, facilities, and infrastructure, as well as to improve their welfare. One of the agency for marine and fisheries research and human resources commitment in gender mainstreaming in the HC program is to assign one of our researchers to assist in the gender survey, which was conducted on May 25 and June 221 on Rotendao Island, is Nusa Tenggara. The results of the mentoring show that both men and women on Rotendao Island have access, control, and participate in business activities, both in capture fisheries, seaweed cultivation, processing, and marketing of fisheries products. The result of the assistance also show that there are still some obstacles that come from socio-cultural and infrastructure in the effort to realize gender-inclusive marine and fisheries development. Therefore, the framework for analysis of living species and livelihood with the perspective of gender equality and social inclusion is an appropriate framework for embracing all people in development. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, hopefully this webinar will encourage a role for women and men from various social groups and in particular the marginalized in sustainable fishery and marine resource management. Thank you. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ms. Hikmayani. Thank you for that warm opening. Indeed, while the role of women and minorities in the fishery sector is generally recognized legally, as Ms. Hikmayani mentioned, the roles are sometimes undervalued in the value chain. So it is essential that gender issues of minority groups are integrated in planning and implementation of interventions. Thank you for pointing that out, Ms. Hikmayani. Thank you. So to learn more about what our colleagues are doing to address the unique issues of Arafura and Timor Seas, like what Ms. Hikmayani has mentioned in her opening, here is a short presentation about GMC and ATC2 projects.
The Arafura and Timor Seas region, or ATS, is unique in terms of its ecology, geography, and socio-political structure. It is rich in resources and home to a vast array of natural wonders. Shared by Australia, Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, and Timor-Leste, this fertile corridor of tropical water connects the Pacific and Indian Oceans. This area provides the peoples of many nations with essential resources, while also stocking the world's oceans with biodiversity. Unfortunately, overfishing, marine and land-based pollution, loss of habitat, and the impacts of climate change create a major threat to most marine life in the region. This underlines the urgent need for a collective regional action and transboundary management of economically important fish species, critical habitats, and marine megafauna. Therefore, in 2006, the ATS Expert Forum developed and submitted a bid to the Global Environment Facility, which came to be known as the Arafura and Timor Seas Ecosystem Action Program, or ATSEA. The initial phase was officially launched in 2010 and created a regional collaboration tasked with finding sustainable solutions for problems affecting coastal and marine resources in the region. In 2019, the second phase of ATSEA, known as ATSEA-2, has been adapted to take the collaboration and coordination in the ATS region a step further through the endorsement and implementation of a 10-year vision for the ATS, known as the Strategic Action Program. It is made up of three main components. The first component focuses on strengthening the regional and national collaboration mechanism and establishing a stakeholder partnership forum to facilitate implementation of priority actions and better participatory processes. The second component focuses on developing an ecosystem approach to the fisheries management plan, strengthening the implementation of regional plan of action to combat IUU fishing, assessing marine and land-based pollution, establishing and supporting the management of marine protected areas, and developing a regional plan to enhance marine turtle protection. And the third component focuses on improving the monitoring of the ATS region and sharing knowledge gained from the project. Through the three components, ATC2 aims to achieve its main objectives in the ATS to foster sustainable development in the region by improving the quality of life of its inhabitants through restoration, conservation, and sustainable management of marine coastal ecosystems for a better life.
Kalau dari bubu rasa rajungan hidup, kalau jaring itu mati, Bu.
Bubu termasuk yang sangat sedikit tangkapan sampingannya karena dia memang celahnya kecil yang hanya dikhususkan untuk rajungan.
Kalau yang terlalu kecil tuh, dia akan dituang kembali lah ke laut.
Ketawanya di perebusan itu. Kalau istilahnya kita tahu.
Komposisi pekerjanya itu memang lebih banyak perempuan, itu sekitar 90%.
Sangat membantu ekonomi gitu. Kita kan bisa kerja di sana untuk bantu sehari-hari.
GMC and ATC2 will continue to ensure fisheries and management approaches are holistic, inclusive of gender and all stakeholder groups, and are uniquely tailored to the needs of the Arafura Seas and Timor region. So as you can see, there's already things that are happening on the ground now by the GMC and ATC2. So to share with you the concepts of intersectionality of gender, social inclusion, coastal resource management, marine protection, and climate change is our keynote speaker, Ms. Alda Sosa Lemos da Rosa. Ms. Da Rosa is a senior staff at National Directorate of Fisheries and Aquaculture in Timor-Leste. Her passion is on ensuring gender equality. So here with us today is Ms. Da Rosa.
Good morning, everyone. Hello.
Good morning, Ms. Rosa.
My to for inviting me to be here today. So today I will speak about the intersectional of gender, social inclusion, coastal resource management, marine protection, and climate change. We have identified many ways, different ways in which climate change affect women and men depend on the fishery sector. The various ways identified as a farming, grazing, work for owner, or profit sharing system, household small business. The various ways we identify for women and men so that we will not depend on the fishery sector because of the impact of climate change by looking for other alternatives. The second is we have
Hello, Mr. Rosa. Hello. Hi, everyone. I think we're having a problem with Ms. De Rosa's connection. While she figures it out, maybe we can move on to the next panel. Is that okay? So we can give her time to fix the technicals. For our next topic, Ms. Yeni Wijaya will talk about the experiences, challenges, and opportunities in mainstreaming gender and inclusion in the fishery and marine sector. Ms. Wijaya is the gender focal for UNDP Indonesia. Her expertise is on gender mainstreaming, and her advocacy is to support the advancement of women's economic empowerment. Here today with us is Ms. Wijaya.
Okay, good morning, Thea. Thank you. I will start my presentation and my now. So first of all, I would like to say good morning, selamat pagi to all participants here. Excellency Head of Fisheries Research Center, the Indonesia Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries, Ibu Yayan Hikmayani. Selamat pagi, Ibu. Represent the Chair of Agency for Research and Human Resources, Bapak Prof. Insinyur R. Syarif Wijaya, PhD. Mr. Calestino Dahkunha Barreto, National Director of Marine Special Planning, Capture and Aquatic Resource Management, Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries, Timor-Leste. Ms. Alda Sousa Lemos, Senior Staff at National Directorate of Fisheries and Aquaculture and the Timor-Leste Focal Point for CTI-CFF Women Leaders Forum. All speakers, experts, and participants. It's pleasure to be here. It's pleasure to be here. I'm pleased to join you today to represent UNDP Indonesia in this webinar on mainstreaming gender and social inclusion in fishery and marine sectors in the Arafura and Timor Seas region. I will share UNDP's experience in mainstreaming gender and social inclusion in our programs. UNDP has applied 6 implementation principles in our development programming. These include developing innovative solutions with multiplier effects across the SDGs, promoting a whole of government and whole of society approach, maximizing collaboration through vertical and horizontal linkage across sectors and issues, prioritizing the leave no one behind principles, investing in enhancing gender equality, and acting as a global and local partner to facilitate Indonesia's aspirations at the global and regional levels. As the principle of United Nations, UNDP, we are standing for the gender equality that entails to the concept that all human beings, both women and men, are free to develop their personal abilities, make choices without limitations set by stereotypes, rigid gender roles, or prejudice. Maybe the slide presentation can move to, okay, thank you. So gender equality and the principle of leave no one behind are part of the DNA of UNDP. Whether we are working on intervention in the democratic and poverty reduction sector, on sustainable financing for SDGs, advocating for climate actions, disaster rehabilitation and recovery, or environment sector, which include the marine and fisheries sector. We examine these issues using the lens of the gender for achieving the SDGs. And this year, maybe can move to the slide number 3. So this year, UNDP in Indonesia is continuing to expand our gender equality strategy, which goes a step further to affirm our commitment to our core principles and our support for our partners and beneficiaries. This extends beyond gender equality to also involve our social inclusion approach. Through the gender equality and social inclusion strategy, UNDP Indonesia addresses multiple and intersecting forms of discrimination, such as those based on gender, geographic disadvantage, age, poverty, race, disability, and other characteristics. Next slide, please. Okay, through gender and social inclusion strategy, UNDP can increase the capacity of individuals who face multi-social discrimination, so they will enjoy equal benefits of development agenda. There are 7 integrated work streams of our gender and social inclusion strategy for UNDP in Indonesia, which include inclusion in our organizational structure, organizational capacity. For the UNDP Indonesia also has enabled environment for the supporting factor for the gender equality and social inclusion. We also have the work stream for the GESI or gender and social inclusion into our knowledge management and communications, partnership, and lastly, the sustainable gender equality results. So we ensure the results have included the gender and social inclusion dimension as well. Next slide, please. So in order to achieve gender equality, we must ensure that women are given a place at the table, that their voices are heard, that we advance women's empowerment in creative and innovative ways. We provide equal opportunity for women and men in terms of their participation and also their access to resources. I'd like to highlight gender mainstreaming and social inclusion as effective strategies for the project to address and challenge gender barriers and discriminatory actions. It has been proven as a tool that can transform our commitment into really inclusive real actions, ensuring a gender dimension is maintained in the design of our projects, their implementation, monitoring and evaluation. Women and men's concern and experience are very well considered and accommodated using this framework. Through gender and social inclusion framework, or we call it as GESI as well, the program implementation or the project implementation can have a multiple track strategy. which integrates the gender consideration along with the leaving no one left behind or LNOB principle, which focusing intervention not only on the gender, but also to specific groups of people, including the disadvantaged and marginalized people. GESI, by using the GESI strategy or GESI framework, the UNDP Indonesia also can provide rooms for conducting a gender-sensitive evidence-based research and knowledge management as part of our commitment in documenting the lesson learned, sharing the lesson learned, and also to inform policy. Next slide, please. Thank you. So through using the gender lens, UNDP programming is seeking to uncover inequality of gender relations. What are the gaps, causes, barriers, opportunity to transform the inequality to better equal society for both women and men. Next slide, please. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, the goal of the GESI is transforming the harmful norms for the UNDP at various levels that we are working on, including policy, community, and individual. At the individual level, we supported enhancing the capacity of women's and men's access and control over resources, any kind of resources. To reduce wrong gender perceptions in society, UNDP engaged key community and stakeholders to build informal collective actions to transform these cultural norms and address exclusionary practices. Advocating for these issues to institutions is also important, particularly on unfair law and societal practices, to support, to support the gender transformative change. And UNDP doesn't allow any gender blind or gender neutral programming and projects. Instead, we attempt to recognize the symptom. We attempt to recognize gender differences and disparities, and we work on addressing and overcoming the historical biases, challenging the inequality and discriminatory norms. Defining a gender-sensitive and responsive theory of change is imperative for us. Gender recommendations is really needed to strengthen the policy planning and development for UNDP in Indonesia. Next slide, please. Okay, thank you. So this is one of example of our works on the Fisheries Improvement Project or VIP with the Indonesian Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries. The project exercise fisheries, which is built from the recognition of the gender problems at fishery sectors since the stage of the project's design. The project has succeeded in designing their theory of change, as you may see in the my slide presentation here, that is applicable to address the gender issues for sustainability fisheries improvement. Gender dimension is also used to draw drivers of change to support acceleration of fishery sectors towards achievement to sustainable development goals, to mitigate all barriers that might occur during the implementation of the project. Next slide, please. Okay, on the next slide, you may see one other example from our project in Indonesia on ASEA 2 project for the implementation in Indonesia. Also, this project is working together, have very close collaboration with the Indonesian Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries and also the other stakeholders. So in this project, gender-sensitive activities are developed and implementing using information that we gather from the evidence-based gender disaggregated analysis. To have a gender transformative change, this project intervenes not only by focusing at individual level of women, but also builds community support to support these women, such as we also work with the community-based integrated coastal management in Rotendao. While in Aru, the customer leaders also being engaged to reduce, to help to support the reduction of misperception on masculine marine and fisheries management. Next slide, please. Okay, so this will be my closing slides. In this closing, I would like to emphasize once again that transforming gender commitments into concrete action is not easy. But we can address these issues by developing innovative actions, innovative ways on the gender mainstreaming and social inclusion. At technical level, from UNDP experience, from our experience, projects need to set a very basic gender sensitive baseline. And even the project should have a gender sensitive indicators and outputs, ensuring that the project also includes the gender tracking and expenditure. Furthermore, having available gender experts can help the program implementation, and the project will also get the advantage from that. And finally, having the gender action plans in the project is very strategic to help us to track the project progress in terms of the gender equality or gender mainstreaming and social inclusion. So those are that we can share to you this morning about how UNDP works on the gender equality and social inclusion. What are the principles? What are the basic fundamental components that we incorporate to our programming or the project implementation in Indonesia. Also, of course, I would like to also mention the collaboration with the government also become important as we get collective support and we have the same commitment in terms for the gender equality or sustainable fisheries in this case, and for the SDGs achievement in 2030. Thank you, Thea.
Thank you, Ms. Wijaya. Thank you for sharing your experiences and insights. And thank you for pointing out that achieving equality and inclusion is a multi-track strategy and that there is no one-size-fits-all approach. And the case studies that you have mentioned are indeed interesting, especially pointing out that we also need to take into consideration the customary laws of the areas and important collaboration with the government. So to share with you the concepts of intersectionality of gender, social inclusion, coastal resource management, marine protection, and climate change is our keynote speaker, Ms. Alda Salsa Lemos de Rosa. Ms. Alda, are you ready?
Can you hear me? Hello, yeah.
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you, Ms. Alda.
Okay, I will quickly presentation because the internet connection. So today I will presenting about intersectional of gender, social inclusion, coastal resource management, marine protection, and climate change. We have three items here. So the one is identify different ways in which climate change affect women and men depend on the fishery sector. So various ways were identified for women and men so that they would not depend on the fishery sector because of the impact of the climate change. By looking for other alternative, the women and men who they choose for like farming, rising, work for animals, or profit sharing systems. So also household small business like your selling basic needs. So the second, the reason of identify as to why cross-cutting gender issues are important to consider in marine protection and climate change adaptation. Important to consider gender cross-cutting issues. All gender individual on groups have need, interests, knowledge, skills, and responsibilities in relation to the use and management of marine resources. All those groups have to be recognized and acknowledged in decision-making process of marine resource, as well as having equal opportunities and benefits. And also, it will change the pattern of life can place the interest of marine protection, strong the face the challenges of climate change of improved living standards. Women have proven to be leading the way forward more equitable and sustainable solution to climate change. For example, the women in Atauru, Ililai, Com, and therefore in Timor-Leste, they have started and provide solutions to climate change and marine protection by household plastic waste management, collection turtle eggs for to not eaten by human and animals. The third, why understand the importance of including in mindful range interventions to aid gender and social inclusion issues. Various interventions, including from government intervention, support equipment like equipment for gender groups, capacity building, facilitated by providing credit, microcredit, with a small move to small business toward microcredit. Also from development partners like capacity building and equipment support. I think Mrs. Xia from me, I have finished the presentation, quickly presentation from Timor-Leste. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. De Rosa. Thank you for highlighting the different ways in which climate change affect men and women in the fishery sector. It is indeed important that everyone, regardless of gender, ethnicity, or affiliation, should be able to participate and influence decision making. And thank you for pointing that out. And that the only way to assure sustainability of any intervention is for everyone to be consulted, for each and all stakeholders, regardless of their affiliation or ethnicity or gender, that they should be consulted. Thank you for the presentation, Ms. De Rosa. Just to note, for those who just tuned in, we have real-time interpreters available for those who wish to listen in Bahasa. The feature is in the lower right button on your screen. It's a globe icon. You can choose Bahasa and opt to mute the original audio. This webinar is currently being live streamed on YouTube. The link is on the chat box. For our next session, we will have 3 topic discussants. After each discussion, we will give our speakers 10 minutes to answer questions from participants. So you can type your comments or questions through the Q&A feature, which is in the button on the lower center of your screen. So anytime you can type in your comments or questions regarding the presentations. The next topic is on mainstreaming gender and social inclusion in fishery improvement projects, and also and on multi-sectoral coordination. So here to share her experiences is Ms. Karen Hildal. Ms. Hildal is the gender focal point for global marine commodities, and she has worked in the areas of environmental conservation and climate change with focus on gender and social issues. So here with us today is Ms. Hildal.
Hello. Thanks for the introduction and thanks for the opportunity to participate today. So I'm going to be speaking about a gender perspective in multi-stakeholder collaboration in fishery improvement projects. And if we can get my presentation going, I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to give an introduction to the GMC, Global Marine Project in general, then I'm going to look at GMC and multi-stakeholder collaboration strategies, and turn to gender in multi-stakeholder collaboration. Next slide, please. Next slide. So the Global Marine Commodities, or the GMC project, is an interregional initiative. It's implemented by the ministries and bureaus of fisheries and planning of 4 countries: Costa Rica, Ecuador, Indonesia, and the Philippines. It has the technical support of the UNDP, as well as our project partner, the Sustainable Fisheries Partnership. And it's funded by the Global Environment Facility. The project aims to mainstream sustainability into seafood supply chains, and it has the overarching goal of rebuilding and protecting fish stocks and livelihoods. Next slide, please. It started in 2017, and it will be finishing in this November 2021. Next slide, please. So these are the fisheries targeted by the project. We work with large pelagic fish in Costa Rica, mahi-mahi tuna and small pelagic fish in Ecuador, blue swimming crab and tuna in Indonesia, and in the Philippines we work with blue swimming crab and octopus. So next slide, please. Among the different strategies to promote fishery sustainability, the GMC project promotes 2 principal multi-stakeholder collaboration approaches. The first approach is called Sustainable Marine Commodity Platforms. This is a UNDP methodology to promote multi-stakeholder governance. These are participatory dialogue platforms. They are government-led, and they promote collaboration among government, NGOs, academia, and the private sector, including actors all along the supply chain. And these are highly flexible in terms of scope, and they can be applied at different jurisdictional scales, locally, nationally, and they can be applied to different fisheries, or a combination of fisheries. And the aim of the spaces is to promote fishery sustainability. So to do so, different actors come together and they create or they strengthen a fisheries management plan and or a fisheries action plan. And these platforms are made official and formal in legislated structures for fisheries management to ensure sustainability. And the second project approach is to support and promote FIPs, fishery improvement projects. And these are usually private sector led, and the actors get together to identify environmental issues to be addressed, to set priority actions, oversee the action plans adopted. And a key feature of these FIPs is the role of standards such as MSC and Marine Trust in defining fishery management performance and goal setting. And for smaller scale fisheries where certification is not necessarily a viable option, they can still show progress in fishery sustainability through FIPs. These FIPs usually involve companies in the seafood supply chain. The range of participants is flexible. It can involve fishers, processors, wholesalers, retailers, government, relevant scientists, NGOs, etc. And like the dialogue platforms that I mentioned, they're flexible across different types of fisheries and jurisdictions. And an important feature of the Global Marine Commodities Project is that we also help to link FIPs with these dialogue platforms and with fisheries authorities. And this helps to increase the role of the role of the FIPs in fisheries management. For example, in the case of small pelagic fish in Ecuador, the FIP members actually participated as participants in the dialogue platforms. So, turning to the next slide, the success of these projects relies on the full contribution and support of their stakeholders, ideally of actors all along the supply chain. And women participate in a range of activities related to fisheries, which we've seen, and all along the supply chain in both paid and unpaid activities. But their roles in the sector are still often poorly recognized, and often they're participating less. So if we don't address these gender disparities, women can remain vulnerable to even further inequities, hence the importance of a gender perspective. So I want to show a really quick video. It's just a little over 2 minutes long, which helps highlight the importance of making women's roles in fisheries more visible. and helps to explain the GMC project model and some of our main actions. It's in Spanish, but it's subtitled in English.
Mi nombre es Mariana Quijije Reyes, soy tecnóloga en pesca del ESPOL, tengo 16 años trabajando en el sector pesquero. Te puedo decir que comerciante de pesca para descarte, en este medio soy yo, el resto todos son hombres. Pero entonces eso me ha costado mucho porque al principio era como que difícil decirle a un hombre tenemos que hacer esto. Pensaba que iba a estar equivocada, pero luego cuando ya tienes razón y dices sí, es verdad. Y te dan la confianza para que tomes las decisiones, porque ves que en el momento que te dan la confianza para tomar las decisiones es porque lo estás haciendo bien. Las mujeres vinculadas a los sectores pesqueros cumplen roles de suma importancia. En ellos, en la actividad pesquera desempeñan diversos oficios a lo largo de la cadena de valor, al estar involucradas en la preparación de artes de pescas, en las capturas, en la recepción de productos, procesamiento, comercialización, etc.
Hablemos de la mujer que es empresaria dentro del campo pesquero, pero también tenemos que hablar de la mujer como autoridad pesquera, la mujer como científica, que también es parte de todo aquello, o sea, de todo esta cadena que es la cadena pesquera, la cadena acuícola. Entonces, este es el rol que es fundamental.
Los invito a todos ustedes a participar en las cadenas mundiales sostenibles de productos del mar, que es una plataforma muy importante para todos nosotros en el sector pesquero. Miren que están participando diferentes países como son Costa Rica, Filipinas, Ecuador e Indonesia. Estas mesas de diálogo son muy importantes para todos nosotros porque vamos a tener grandes cambios, beneficios, que es lo más importante para nuestro sector. Si nosotros vamos a tener mesas de diálogo, son para mejorar. Yo puedo exponer qué es lo que me está incomodando y ellos van a ver cuál es la forma de podernos ayudar. Eso es lo más interesante, porque la palabra real es ordenamiento, ordenarnos de alguna forma que este sector salga adelante.
Sin diálogo no hay consenso. Entonces el diálogo es la fuente principal y fundamental para lograr una actividad sustentable, sostenible.
So turning to the next slide, and turning to the topic of a gender perspective in multi-stakeholder collaboration, the GMC project has been promoting a gender perspective in these spaces guided by our gender strategy, which we developed in 2019. And I'd like to outline 4 primary areas where we can focus in on doing this. So, well, before passing to the next slide, this is our gender strategy for the project, and you can find it on our project website, and I'll provide the link. So the first area is the importance of understanding gender in the fishery supply chain in fisheries. And to do this, we want to collect sex-disaggregated information on actors along the supply chain and conduct a gender analysis. Ideally, we want to speak with women on the ground all along the supply chain to understand their needs and interests in the local context. And we want to develop publicly available information. This can be a gender fisheries profile, where we can outline the roles and contributions of women and men along the fishery supply chain, for example. If we go to the next slide, the GMC project, we conducted a gender analysis of our project fisheries, and we wanted to understand the gender equality regulatory framework in each country. This includes understanding national legislation, international agreements signed and ratified by the project countries related to gender equality. And we also conducted a situational analysis of men and women in the fishery to understand the local context in relation to gender roles, the sexual division of labor, access, use, and control of resources and of benefits, and power and participation in decision-making in fisheries. And finally, we conducted an institutional analysis because we wanted to understand the capacities of our project implementers to promote a gender perspective in activities. And you can see the results of this analysis in our gender strategy published on our project website. So going to the next slide, we've also been developing gender fishery profiles. The UNTP office in Indonesia and government implementer Bapenas also using some inputs from the Tuna Pollen Line and Handline Association from their gender study of tuna fisheries. They've conducted an interesting study of gender considerations along the tuna and BSC supply chains in the context of FIPS, for example. And the fishery profiles, these that have been developed today, can also be found on our website. So moving to the next slide. The second area that I want to highlight is the need to have increased awareness of the need for a gender perspective in sustainable fisheries management. So the GMC project, if we go to the next slide, we've been promoting trainings for project partners to better understand how to promote a gender perspective in project activities. Next slide, please. We've also been promoting gender trainings and sensitization sessions for dialogue platform members on the importance of promoting gender equality in fisheries. And these actions help stakeholders' perceptions. They help to change their perceptions of women's roles in sustainable fisheries and increase recognition that women should participate in decision-making, and we need to be promoting a gender perspective in fisheries activities. So moving to the next slide, the third area that I want to focus on is the need to increase women's representation and influence. Gender consideration should be considered included when undertaking a stakeholder mapping exercise to document the players in the fishery, who they are, and who should be invited to participate in these multi-stakeholder collaboration spaces. And the participation of women representatives in these spaces should be actively promoted, which is something that we've been doing in the dialogue platform supported by the projects. We can also define and implement mechanisms to encourage women's participation, such as a quota of women's participation in invitations, tailoring invitations to specific women representatives, for example. And the project has also been tracking the participation of women and men in these dialogue platforms. And moving to the next slide, the final area I wish to mention is the need to ensure that gender issues are adequately addressed in processes, plans, and actions of these multi-stakeholder collaboration spaces. It's ideal to appoint a gender focal point. This is something that the project has incorporated into project activities and in the dialogue platform spaces. And this really helps ensure that attention is drawn to gender issues within these governance spaces. We can also engage with public institutions and NGOs that work on gender specifically so that they can provide inputs. And the gender analysis and the gender fisheries profiles that I mentioned earlier, they help support the identification and the incorporation of critical points for gender considerations in the action and management plans. And finally, we want to make sure that we incorporate gender responsive objectives, actions, and indicators in these fishery action and management plans so that any proposed actions have no negative impacts, but rather should benefit both women and men in the fisheries. All of the actions that I've mentioned earlier will help promote this outcome. In the project, we've had some really successful outcomes here that will, by including indicators and activities in these plans, and this will help ensure that gender, that management in fisheries is gender responsive. So moving to the next slide, another cross-cutting action that is important is to increase visibility and understanding of women's roles in fisheries. And towards this end, we have produced some gender publications and some guidelines, and we've incorporated gender perspective in products to increase visibility and to understand women's roles in fisheries. So these are some of our guidelines and publications related to gender that have come out of the project to date. And one that we would like to highlight in particular are the guidelines on how to incorporate a gender perspective in FIPS. And moving to the final slide to conclude, we need commitment to gender equality from all actors. It's important to ensure financial and human resources as well as effective accountability. And there's a lot of momentum on the topic of gender in fisheries to date, and I hope that we can build off of this to meaningfully engage women and men in fisheries planning, fisheries management, governance. And we want to promote gender equality in this sector and also help achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. So for anyone who would like more information, if we go to the final slide, here is on the final slide is the link to our project website, and you can find our document library and my email address, if we can get that final slide up. Thanks so much for the opportunity to participate in this webinar.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ms. Hildal, for discussing the importance of including a range of meaningful stakeholders to achieve an inclusive approach. And for also pointing out that stakeholders should not only include those in the government or the civil society, but also sectors who represent gender and social inclusion issues. Thank you for that. We do have a question here, but I feel that Ms. Hildal and Ms. Vijaya can both answer this one. So maybe Ms. Hildal could answer first, and then Ms. Vijaya could come next. So the question is, because of COVID-19, a lot of information and discussions are now being undertaken online, but many stakeholders on the ground still do not have access to such facilities. What options or strategies can UNDP or other organizations for that matter could offer or advise to projects and even government projects in ensuring that inclusion is being addressed despite these limitations? So very good question and very timely. For the others who also have some questions, you may type here at the Q&A box. Comments or questions you can type at the Q&A box. So I request Ms. Hildal to answer first and Ms. Vijaya to answer next. Thank you.
Yeah, this is a huge challenge right now in the time of COVID, and I don't necessarily have all of the answers. I think ideally we work with our partners who are on the ground so that we can try to provide access to facilities. I know of cases where there have been purchases of computers and laptops to help increase access to these kinds of platforms. But I think that, yeah, there's still a lot to be done. And I mean, there's a lot. We need to always be engaging, like I said, with actors all along the supply chain. It's really challenging right now with all of the restrictions and all of the precautions that we have to take. So, I mean, if we can do surveys in the meantime, phone calls, what have you, for those who don't necessarily have access to computers, have people on the ground as much as possible. I mean, but yeah, it's a challenge.
Thank you, Ms. Hildal. Ms. Vijaya, could you share to us your experience during implementing it during this COVID time?
Okay, thank you, Thea. I think the answer is similar with Ms. Hildal, yeah. Due to the social restriction, of course, it limits our mobilization, right? And for the UNDP in Indonesia, from the experience of our project's implementation, so since the early outbreaks, many projects have gone for redesigning or adjusting the
I'm sorry, Ms. Vijaya, we can't hear you right now. We can't hear you, sorry.
I can hear you.
There's better. Could you say
Okay.
that again, please? Because we missed the last part of the answer.
Okay, maybe I will repeat, yeah. Okay, so due to the social restriction, it limits our mobilization. And since the early outbreaks, the projects in UNDP in Indonesia has went for redesigning or adjusting our implementation strategy and approach. Since the early outbreak, we have some projects that finally decided to work to engage more the involvement of community-based organization or the civil society, because of course with the support of the capacity building on them, and also with the support that they have, with the support and assistance for them to understand about the minimal requirement for the on the health, safety, and prevention standards in terms for the COVID-19. So that's what we do. And the other thing that we always keep saying, that the safety and health protocol standard for the COVID-19 must apply in all our project implementation, including with to our partners. And the other experience, some of the projects in UNDP also start to distribute the PPE, or protection and prevention equipment, health protection and prevention equipment. It includes the mask to our direct beneficiaries and also our partners, and it's very useful. And regarding to the virtual phone surveys, the virtual gender analysis, we also experience these activities. It is not easy, but because the situation is also pushing us to make more creative and innovative ideas in the situation of COVID-19, but we did that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the insights, Ms. Hildal and Ms. Vijaya. So yes, that's a good strategy, engaging more community-based organization, becoming more localized. I know that for some organizations, they have also started hiring more local staff, people who are, if they need information or data from a certain village or a certain town, they actually just hire people within that town to gather all those data instead of sending people. Another sort of tool that's being used right now to reach out more is the Kobo Toolbox, which is very useful since you can use it even without phone signal. So you can gather information without phone signal, and then you just send that information to the headquarters or the consultant when you already have a signal. So very useful when you're doing remote survey or remote work, because it's not dependent on the signal of the person. So those are the things that we have come to adjust. Okay. So we have a few more questions. We have a question for Ms. Hildal. Ms. Hildal, based on GMC's experience, how big is the difference now from baseline to current status in terms of percentage on women's engagement or other key impacts that you have observed as a result of GMC's initiative?
Okay, thanks so much. That's a great question. That's a hard one to answer. We don't actually have information in terms of percentage. In the commodity platforms in the different countries, we didn't achieve exactly gender parity in all of the cases, but close. And it's hard to say because we specifically targeted women representatives to try and have parity. So it's hard to say the difference between if we hadn't done that and had, but I would hope that it's increased. As for impacts, I would say that one of the biggest ones and most important ones was, like I mentioned, to include gender objectives, activities, indicators in the fisheries management and action plans. And another, I would say, is the increased awareness of the actors, the stakeholders we work with, government, private sector, of the importance of including a gender perspective in these fisheries management activities.
Thank you, Ms. Hildal. Thank you for the insight. We have a third question here, and I guess maybe any one of you could answer this, including Ms. Alda. So what exactly does intersectionality mean? Is it women participation and access dependent on fisheries, or women of minority religious groups in fisheries? Is being inclusive time-consuming and requires additional resources? What are the boundaries to engage more? It's a very loaded question. So you can actually just divide those questions and choose to answer. We can start with Ms. Karen.
Yes, this is another great question. Okay, so yeah, I would say that we want to have a perspective that is inclusive and diverse. And this means, yes, engaging with minority religious groups. It can mean I mean, it means always asking the question of which women and which men. So think about differences related to age, geographic location, ethnicity, et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on. And in terms of it being more time consuming, I would say yes. But I would say that there's always an extra effort needed. But I would say that this is something that's really important because it ensures that our activities are more sustainable. They're more inclusive. They have more a broader perspective because we're bringing in more actors who can bring in more ideas, and also the initiatives respond to the needs and interests of a more diverse group of actors. And I think it's more sustainable in time. And in terms of requiring additional resources, yeah, ideally we would have additional resources to make sure that we can. I do think it does require more money and more time if you're going to be taking this approach, but I think it's so important and, like you said, more sustainable. And as for boundaries to engage more, I'll leave that to somebody else to answer.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Vijaya, do you have any insights on this one? The question on what does intersectionality really mean?
Okay, hello. Yeah, thank you, Ms. Thea. I think it's similar with Miss Hilda. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so intersectionality means that we putting all the factors that apply to an individual in combination, rather than considering each factor in isolation. This factor includes the disabilities, age, race, income, etc. Of the women and men. So for example, if we are seeing or analyze about the gender needs of the women, for example, we need to also see her background, her education status, her family, whether it is from the poor family or it is from the living at the rural area or the urban area. Because from that perspective, then we can get more comprehensive results, yeah, more comprehensive information that can direct us, that can navigate us to implement or to design the project that have sufficient strategy and have the proper strategy so we can conduct effective strategy to have the best results. And what are the boundaries to engage more? I think from the intersectionality analysis, then we will find a very comprehensive analysis from our target group, for example. And of course, it will be require more effort to intervene this such of groups, because we already know then it is not only about their gender, but also about their social status, their social society, their capacity, and etc. and so on. That will affect our strategy, that will affect on how we can treat this group, so we will be ensured that we are doing in the right ways, or in the right in the right ways. I think that's from me, Thea. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vijaya. So Miss Alda De Rosa is having problems with going online, but if I could ask Miss Alda to just type in the answers to her answers to the question. There's a specific question. There's a question specifically directed to her, and also if she could lend her insights on what intersectionality really means. So Miss Alda, if you can just type your questions, that will be great. We look forward to your answers and to your insights. So if anyone still has questions, you can feel free to type your questions on the box anytime, and we will address to it. But we will move on to our next topic. Our next discussant will talk about the role of women and minorities in the fishery value chain, well, especially her experience in Aru, Indonesia. Here is Ms. Kusni Satyawati. Ms. Satyawati is the director of Kelola Laut Nusantara. That KLN is a seafood processing company with operations in Java and the Natuna Seas. So her expertise is on seafood manufacturing and food safety management. You may choose your preferred language for this session by clicking on the language feature on the lower right side of the screen. So thank you. Right now here with us is Ms. Satyawati. Thank you.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Hopefully, you all can hear me clearly. Yeah? So, as an entrepreneur, I will present you about how the economic growth and how it works in the community. Can I have the slide, please?
Ms. Kusni, you have an echo in the background.
Hello?
Okay, you may proceed.
Yeah. So as an entrepreneur, I will talk about the economic growth and how it works in the community, and then connected with the woman empowerment and in inclusion. So please, the next slide, please. Yes. So my experience is in seafood manufacturing, seafood processing company. It's about 15 years, and we have a location in Arafura Sea for the collecting area, and then we have PT Kelola Nusantara in Juana as a manufacturer. So for the first step, I will talk about the resources. You know that Indonesia has strategic geographic positions. It creates a large biodiversity of the species with potential value, the climate, the land, and the sea. So many economic seafood product live over there. And then for the next step, I will bring you to the market demand. Please, the next slide. Yes. So, as an entrepreneur, we send the seafood product to U.S. market and Australia. So this is the demand of the seafood products as we can. As a sample, we have a squid whole round, squid whole clean. That's all packaged in frozen, and then we send overseas, and then in package we seal in the cold storage, and then how to easy to consume, because with the fancy package everything. So from the resources, and then we get the market demand. It should be the system connecting both of two. It's called seafood manufacturing system. Next slide, please. Yes. So in resources and the market demand, it should be a fair trade. So in seafood market, there fair trade means that different price according to different good quality and values. The high economic product for the fisheries products is live fish, and then the second is chilled fish, and then the other number 3 is frozen fish, and the next is dried and salted fish. So because you know that the fisheries product is highly perishable, maybe number 3 of frozen fish can produce available in large quantity, because the frozen fish is the species of frozen fish a long shelf life. For the next, so I told you about it should be a bridge that connecting about the resources and the market demand is called the manufacturing system. So the manufacturing system, what should we do with the manufacturing system? There is a community and the resources. So to gain the specification of the market, the community should be coached about how to handle the raw material in order to maintain the quality. Because I told you before that seafood product has highly perishable, so it should be a skill and good knowledge how to handle the raw materials, and then the community should have knowledge about how to grade out the quality. So to grade up the quality, because knowledge of the grading, we should have grading in order to get a good price. So there is a good price for good quality. And the community should have a skill about how to produce finished good with high quality, because now the market need a high quality with a long life shelf, and then so we need to empower the community, because besides of the character, the action should be caring character. Yeah, so the community, the woman have a potential to empower in the manufacturing system. The next, please. So, if the resources and then the market demand connecting with good manufacturing practices, all we get is the wisdom how to manage our resources. This process will continue if it's carried out with appropriate steps. Okay, good manufacturing with number one is good manufacturing with the high quality of product. So this should be applicated in we can go for this program if the empowerment and the woman in the community coach well. So the community empowerment with the high skill and good profit is, if we got the high quality with good handling, we will get the high quality of the seafood product, and there is a good profit making with the good quality, because there's a good price for good quality. And then all the goal for this program is how to make the community aware about the sustainable and renewable resources. So they will have a wisdom in the community how to take care of the resources. Thank you. I think this is my topic, the economic growth and how it works in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kusni. Thank you, Mrs. Chawati, for highlighting how economic growth could lead to community empowerment, and that this economic growth could only be sustained if there is also focus on ecological sustainability. And thank you for pointing that out. So we do have some questions here. Maybe just a question on my end. What are the challenges that you have encountered in the value chain now that there's COVID? Was there any changes on how you do business, or was there any drastic change in how you do business?
You know, in manufacturing system, the government have a rule how should we process the food product by handling by hazard analytical critical control point and good manufacturing system. We have a standard national Indonesia, we call SNI. This is the rule, what should we do to how to make a good quality of the fish. So the most important things to the community, you know, that the women have a character caring, right? So maybe we can, for the first step, what I do, maybe, my experience in Juana, right? So Juana is about Central Java. We have fish from Arafura Sea, and then Arafura Sea bring to Juana. It takes about 2 weeks in river container, and then after the Juana, we do manufacturing. We start about 10 people in maybe one village, and then I teach them how to make a fillet, how to make a good fillet, how to make a good shape of fillet, how to understand about the hygiene and sanitation, and how to package, hand out everything by the good manufacturing practices. And then for 10, I reply to another 10 of you. So we now in Juana we have 100, and more than 50% they are women. So now I get a woman with good skill to handle the resources from Arafura Sea. So maybe the Arafura Sea prepare the raw material, and then the Juana plant this, because I think it's for the infrastructure there is it doesn't facilitate yet. We move the container to Arafura to US. It should be from Surabaya port on Jakarta or Semarang, and then the manufacturer we have a manufacturer in Juana, and then now we send about 2 or 40 footer per month in US, in New York. We have two ports over there in Florida and New York, and then we send 2 or 40 footer with more 100 workers here, and more than 50% are women. Because I told you, women have a character of caring, right? So more easy to teach the woman how to handle the raw materials. That's the point.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Kusni. We have another question. You highlighted the need to strongly engage the community. In your company's experience, what support, if any, or collaboration do you have with national or local government to ensure better community engagement with private sectors?
It's for me?
Yes, Ms. Kusni, yes.
I didn't get the...
I'll read the question again. You highlighted the need, question for Ms. Kusni. You highlighted the need to strongly engage the community. In your company's experience, what support, if any, or collaboration do you have with national or local government to ensure better community engagement with private sectors?
Okay, so in manufacturing of seafood products, we have a quarantine department of the KKP Kementerian, and so maybe all the manufacturing system handled by hazard analytical critical control point. It's called HACCP. The HACCP running by the authority. So so they teach us about the workers and how to handle good manufacturing practice. So, and then regularly, it's about in HACCP certificate. This is the procedure of we send a product to overseas. Yeah, if we finish to produce about 1 container, and then the authority will issue the license. It's called health certificate. Health certificate, and then with health certificate, we can send the product. Health certificate, there is so many grade, grade A, B, C, and then the grade handled by the authority. And for regularly, it's about 2 or 3 months. The authority of quarantine always inspect to us how the production running. If sometimes they found it's not out of the procedure, they will give the solution how to handle, to come back based on the procedure. Because now the international market is very concerned about food safety programs. You know, food safety program, it means that the product should be do not with the professional workers, and then they have a view about the sanitation and hygiene. So the authority with the always campaign how to handle the good manufacturing practices.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Kusni, for that. We have a lot more questions on the chat box, so I do encourage our speakers. Ms. Alda, there's specific questions for you, so if you could answer on the chat box, on the Q&A box, to answer those questions. I do encourage our speakers before to please answer those questions. And for our participants, if you have further questions, you can just type it here. Thank you, Ms. Kusni, for your insights, and thank you for your learnings in the fishery value chain. Our next topic is very timely. It is the impact of COVID-19 on women and minorities in the fisheries sector. Here to discuss that today is Dr. Dedi Aduri. Dr. Aduri has extensive experiences working with coastal communities on climate change, as well as cultural heritages management in Indonesia. He has over 20 years of experience in addressing social conflict and marine resource management. Here today with us is Dr. Aduri.
Hello everyone. Greeting from Indonesian new capital city in East Kalimantan. I'm currently in the field, so sorry for not using this background as requested. Actually, I'm working from a head village office in one of the villages which will be become Indonesian new capital city in some years to come. So to start with, let me share my slides. By the way, thank you for the moderator to inviting me to start the talk. So what I'm going to talk is a specific topic on the impacts of COVID-19 to the women fishers and coastal communities, particularly the fishermen in Indonesia, with a special attention to Arafura and Timor Seas region. Here is more or less what I'm going to cover in these presentations. First is looking at the women's role in Indonesian fisheries, focusing on the economic aspect of it, and then the impact of COVID to fisheries and women fishers in Indonesia. And then see some responses of the women, particularly in reference to the Indonesian Fisherwoman Sisterhood or PPNI, Perempuan Nelayan Indonesia. And then some points for concluding remarks. Let me start with talking about the women roles in Indonesian fisheries economy in this regard. In this, I would like to take you in tours around Indonesia, showing you what Indonesian women are doing in regard to the fisheries. Start with Aceh. You see the two pictures showing the women working in the post-harvest fisheries of productions. Also in the Kepulauan Riau, it's similar to what we just mentioned in Juana and Aru. They're also involved in processing fish or crab for exporting companies. Yeah. Here in Semarang, women also involved in fish trading. Here, the pictures here are taken from auction place, which you can see at least 50% of the participants are women. Here is in Probolinggo, women involved in coastal gleanings. The first pictures on the left side, and also the right-hand side pictures is one of the woman traders. She is one of the bosses there. She does not involve in trading the fish, buying the fish from the fisher, but also providing operational costs for the several fishers group in East Java in Probolinggo. Here are some pictures from Lombok. You can see the women also involved in repairing and preparing fishing gears there. They are also doing some gleaning, the middle pictures there, and also involved in salt making processing or salt productions. Here still in Lombok, traders, fisher traders, woman traders there, and also the last picture showing the group of women involved in making fish ball. Yeah, this is taken from Jorbay in Lombok. Here are some pictures from Sumbawa. There also we can see most of the marketings are the domains or the domain that are more or less dominated by women. You can see the pictures there. The middle one is a woman drying a fish that they are for selling in the form of salted fish. Again, this is showing the bottom picture showing the woman roles. There are some women involved in what do you call labor, yeah, taking the catch from the boats to the trucks for transportation to the market in the cities. And the last pictures on the right hand side is some women. This is buyers but also big boss. Similar to what happened in the women in Probolinggo, they are also not only the buyer but also those who somehow influence the fishing activities because they are providing operational costs for some fisher groups there. This is still from Sumbawa, again showing the women who are very powerful in terms of their economic role, not only in marketing but also in productions. These pictures are taken from Bitung, North Sulawesi, again showing the key, I think, the key roles of women in marketing and also processing, both in Ambon and Seram, in Bitung, and somehow also similar condition we can see in other parts in Maluku, such as in K Islands. Yeah, so women is very dominant, playing roles in fish post-harvest processing in and also trading. These pictures are taken from Biak, Papua. You also can see the role of women there in fish processing and fish marketing, and also the bottom one is quite interesting. It is small. The picture is showing a woman, a lady, taking his son to the sea fishing. Yeah. So in this picture we can see that actually the first years of the socializations or the trainings to the kids for going to the sea or fishing in this regard is the role of women. So again, women in this regard not only important in economic terms as in harvesting, in processing and trading the fish, but also introducing the culture of fishing to the early children of the people in their community. This is pictures are taken from what is it? Asmat. You can see on the right hand side, the left hand side, you can see the role of women in trading, yeah, selling the fish. But the right hand side is a picture showing that fishing is a family event in that particular community. This is in Asmat. So these are a couple of wife and husband and their kids, yeah, going fishing on the coastal area. This also from Papua, again showing the woman's key role in trading fish that was taken by their husband or their community neighbors. Yeah. So in summary, this is a picture showing where is the positions of the woman in fishery system, particularly in terms of economics. Yeah. There, I don't have the pictures of a woman going to the sea, except the pictures of Papuan women go with their kids, with her kids fishing. Yeah, but in Java and in several places also, even in Bajo ethnic group, women are also involved in fishing, going to the sea and catch the fish. Yeah. So, but in general, it's more or less a small number of women who, or ethnic group who allow women going to fish, but there are some. So then we can see also women involved in repairing, or in some cases preparing a small, making a small fishing gears. So they also play a role there, and also, since in the coastal community or small scale fisheries household, there's no strict boundaries between economic activities and household activities. Women usually in charge of arranging the financial matters in the household. So there, in some cases, I found that they are also, in fact, not only calculating how much money can be spent for fishing operations and food and other things, for example, but also sometimes they are who go to the gas stations and buy the fuel and bring it to their husband. So in this regard, they are also playing an important role. Lastly, this is the most important part of the fisheries system, where women play very dominant roles. That is in post-harvest and marketing. So in this regard, I would like to highlight that this economic system of fisheries, we cannot separate between distinctly or in a strict sense between production and marketing, because even if the fisher can produce a lot of fish, harvesting a lot, catch a lot of fish, without being able to sell it to the market, they can sometimes get loose. In fact, they sometimes have to throw the fish back to the sea because of not being connected to the marketing. So marketing is very important in fish productions. Then that is, as I show you with those pictures, the domain where women play significant roles. Now, let me start talking about the impacts of COVID-19 to fisheries and aquafarmers in Indonesia. This is the data collected by the Association of Small-Scale Fishers in Indonesia. Sorry, it's quite outdated. It was updated April last year. So if we look at this information, it is taken from all members of the traditional fishers associations base, yeah, start from Aceh to Maluku to East Nusa Tenggara. The red boxed informations provide the informations about the problems of marketing or marketing related issues. For example, in Semarang, they showed a pasar sepi. That market is very what do you call it, sepi, calm, meaning there's not much activities in the market. Market in terms of physical, but also in selling the fish. So, some information also talking about the cheese of fish collector to buy their fish because the export activities become prohibited or hindered by the COVID-19 pandemic. So if we look at this, we can, I think, conclude that actually the most hit sections in the fisheries economy is the marketing, and that is the position. If we then talk about the role of women and the impact to women, that is the most impacted and the most severe impact experienced by the fishery sector, but that also mean by women. I'll come to that point with pictures in the next slide, but let me read the bottom part of this slide. So COVID-19 attacks consumers physically and economically. It almost paralyzes markets, mode of distribution and marketing. The impact of production is a secondary impact through market. So when the fish cannot be sold, then it doesn't produce income to the fishers, and then they don't have a personal cost for going to fish the next day. So if we go, this is more or less the diagram presentation of this COVID impact to the coastal fishers and particularly women. So the COVID occurred. Of course, the virus also attacks the fishers, pose a threat to the fisher. But so far, I don't hear from the associations of small-scale fisher in Indonesia victims or those who were ill because of the COVID-19 of the fisherman itself. But the problem comes up with the policy of lockdown of the government, and also, of course, the falling of the business, which forced the people not to earn money and to go around for like normal activities. That impacts the marketing, by which the mind or the domain of which women are dominant. So there is more or less the impacts of COVID to the women. This is attacking the marketing post-harvest, and then which is the domain dominated one, but by women. But of course, the collapse of the marketing business also impacted the productions, which is dominated by men, by having not enough income because of the market decrease. Now let me start talking about some responses of the woman to COVID-19 problem. I'm talking about this with referring to Abu Susah Bahari, an Indonesian fisherwoman sisterhood. So this association was established in 25th of December 2005. So the goals are more or less are supporting the women, not only in terms of economy, but also getting their basic rights, being as a fisherwoman as well as being a woman in the community. The left-hand side box represents showing the offices, the brand offices of this association. So we can see East Nusa Tenggara, where the locations of people or community who mostly fish in Arafura and Timor also present there. So what they did in response to COVID, the emergency response was that they produce and distribute mass. So they established kind of home industry for mass productions, and they distribute it freely to the community. They gain some support funding from external funding agency or personal peoples, yeah. And they also from the benefits of the mass production also, because they sell it to public. Yeah, they also buy foods, which then distributed to the marginalized people, to the coastal community impacted seriously by the COVID-19. They also again trying to get external support, so the food and other things that are distributed to the communities are quite in abundance. Yeah. That is more or less the emergency response. The long-term response is establishing programs for post-harvest processing, value-added commodities productions and selling, including online marketing, because as I explained earlier, traditional conventional marketing collapsed due to the COVID, so they are also trying to do marketing with online system. Also, the quite important activities of them is some advocacy for the women rights and also economic independence of women. On the last one, this is my last slide. So what I have already mentioned or discussed or argue is the importance of multiple roles of women in fisheries economy. So they're involved in production system, but the most important is in post-harvest and marketing. Again, that we should also not forget that they are also in charge of household duties. So they have a multiple roles, not only in the business, but also should add another burdens or roles for them in economic or household economy and household activities, of course. These roles actually put them in a more vulnerable to the COVID-19's impact, particularly because the impacts attack more on marketing issues where they play very dominant role there. We see also the response. Yeah, once they can work together as an associations or organization, we can see a good, more, I think, contributions to the community. But I think the more important also these, associations, organizations also boost the what do you call it? Self-respect, or what do you call it? Kepercayaan diri in English. Confidence, self-confidence for women to express themselves, their need, then ask other people not only to respect them, to support in some context them to fulfill their needs. Thank you very much. That's all from my side.
Thank you, Dr. Aduri. Thank you for highlighting the different effects of the pandemic to men and women, and also mentioning the multiple role of women. And thus, it is necessary that any response, whether because of the pandemic or not, should be gender responsive. Thank you for that one. We do have a question for you directly. The question is, what is the impact on fisher folks who are placed on islands where the rate of spread of COVID-19 is small? Is there a downturn from an economic personal point of view as well?
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So as I mentioned, actually the impacts of COVID-19 is more. It started from the market issues. So it depends of those who reside and fishing in quite remote area in small islands. The production is not touched with the COVID because the cases of COVID is not there. And if their production is only for domestic consumptions or marketing, it's okay. There's not much influence of COVID. But if they catch the fish for national and particularly export species of fish or commodities, they are also impacted in more or less similar degree with other communities, fishing communities.
Thank you, Dr. Aturi. So it means that it doesn't matter whether there's COVID in the area or not, there is an effect in the fishing community.
Yes, through marketing, or value chains issues.
Okay. You have mentioned a while back about the multiple burden of women. Did you notice any change in terms of unpaid care work because of COVID? Were women doing a lot more work now because of COVID, or was there any change in that one?
Sorry, I don't get the point of your question.
Was there any change in the unpaid care work or the multiple burden of women because of COVID?
Yes. Actually, I have a 2 minutes video. Again, it's a video of the head of the Indonesian fisherwoman sisterhood, showing that actually the burdens become double for women, because since the COVID attacked the marketings, so they cannot produce much money or income from post-harvest processing and marketing. Yet they are also have to responsible to supply their husband with operational costs for their fishing. So they have to go borrowing money to other bosses or other agencies. That is an example of additional burden of COVID to the women.
Oh, that's very
answers.
interesting.
Yeah.
That's very interesting, Dr. Aturi. Thank you so much for sharing that insight. Do we have more questions from the participants? You are free to type on the Q&A box if you have further questions to any of our speakers. For those who don't have questions, it's also very interesting to read the answers of the speakers to the previous questions. If you look at the Q&A box, you click it and you go to answered questions, you will see the answers of our speakers. They have kindly shared their insights on the questions of our participants. You will see a lot of that. So it's good to open it and just read the answers to the questions. Do we have questions from participants? From panel, do you have any questions to Dr. Aduri regarding COVID-19? No other questions? Okay. There is a lot to process on this webinar. We have discussed not only the concepts, but also practical experiences. So Ms. Alda has shared to us the concepts of intersectionality, but the other speakers have also shared their practical experiences, their challenges, the opportunities that they have to mainstream gender and inclusion. We have learned that participation of women and men in adaptation decision-making processes is very important. So not only women, but women and men and minorities. It's important that they have a say on any decision-making processes and to access resources. So not only that they could decide, but all of them should have equal access to resources. And these are the things that are needed to achieve an inclusive process. We also learned that stakeholders, policymakers, and implementers should have awareness of the cross-sectionality of gender, climate change, marine protection, and all of that. Why is this important? Because we know that one thing leads to another. During times of crisis, during times of emergency, it's usually the women and the minorities who are vastly affected. And during crisis, the inequality is greatly, it's greatly increased or aggravated. Apart from the concepts, we must also acknowledge that we also need technical tools for planning, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation. That it's not enough that we know the concepts, but also how to use these concepts and how to integrate that when we monitor and when we implement. And most importantly, I think the key takeaway from this workshop would be that inclusivity means recognizing the different needs in adaptation, opportunities, and capacities of women and minorities. Like we have mentioned, like Ms. Yanni had mentioned, that there's no one size fits all approach, and that everything has to be taken into consideration. We look at the situation, we look at the people involved, and take that into consideration in our planning and implementation. Do we have any more questions from the? Do you have any more questions from the participants? There's an interesting question for maybe Miss Alda. Is Miss Alda there? There's an interesting question for Miss Alda that she could maybe input some more. What does intersectionality mean? Is it women participation and access dependent on fisheries? Or does it mean just involving minorities? Is it time consuming and does it require additional resources? Can we ask Ms. Alda to answer that interesting question? Okay, I think she has trouble connecting, but to answer that question, intersectionality is the interconnected nature of gender and other overlapping issues such as climate change or marine protection in this situation. So like what I mentioned, those disasters tend to aggravate existing inequality, so therefore they have an overlap in terms of intervention. So being inclusive does not necessarily mean it's time consuming. In fact, when you are inclusive, it means that your intervention has a greater chance of becoming more sustainable because relevant stakeholders were involved in making the decision-making process. So those are the issues on intersectionality. Are there, I'd like to ask some of our, I'd like to ask our panels if they had any concluding thoughts on how we can take this learning and take it to our countries or take this intervention to the programs that we are currently doing right now. How can we make all these concepts more practical and take it to the countries that we're working with? Can we ask Ms. Yenny perhaps?
Okay, yeah, thank you, Thea. I just want to say that when we are working towards for the gender equality achievement, the gender equality itself means that it is our goal, but it is also the process. In a way, to the process, we need to reserve some special measures. We need to conduct specific actions, which should be gender sensitive, gender responsive, to look at the more comprehensive, not only men and women, but also the identity and the characteristic beyond the identity of men and women. As you mentioned before, Thea, that social inclusion is actually to look at more comprehensive. Thank you, Thea.
Thank you. Ms. Karen, do you have any last words on how they can use the concepts that they've learned right now and take that to their countries?
Sure. I mean, I think there are so many learnings coming out of this webinar, and I think that in all of our organizations, ideally, we don't have just one gender focal point. We all have an understanding of what is gender, what are social equity topics, what is intersectionality that we were discussing today. We all need to know about this because these are topics that we need to be able to bring into everything we're doing, every initiative, every action that we take where we're not thinking about these topics properly. We have the potential of actually increasing gaps. So my challenge to everybody is to think about how we can incorporate all of this in the work that we do day to day to decrease gaps, to promote social and gender equity in everything that we do.
Thank you, Ms. Karen. For Dr. Aduri, I have a specific question. So from the things that you have learned and from the things that you have experienced in your study, do you think those learnings could also apply post-pandemic? So what are the things that we can get from that and use it post-pandemic? Thank you.
Sorry, I was muted by the host.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to highlight an importance of an organization's women's kind of group movement in that regard. What I see, that is why actually I take innocent woman fisherwoman association as an example, because I see the impact, particularly a snowball impact of such movement is quite important. I quite not only important, but we can see it, yeah, compared with if we work with them at a small group membership form, or if, of course, we can also not see a serious impact if we work with them at the individual level. So I would suggest that any initiative to increase the women's inequalities, women equalities, not only in regard to COVID or disaster context, but in even normal context, we have to encourage them to work in a group rather to, and also kind of form a kind of association, because otherwise their voice and their activities cannot be heard by more people, and particularly power holders such as government. So in that regard, I would like to highlight the importance of supporting the establishment of a kind of associations.
Thank you. That's a good insight. Yes, indeed, we need that one. We need people to organize at the local level so they have more consolidated voice on what they need. We have a question here on maybe Ms. Yenny or Ms. Karen can answer this, but based on various discussions earlier, where do you see the LGBT's role in the picture of inclusivity?
Okay. Thank you, Thea. This is such a difficult question, yeah, for the Indonesia context, because you are asking me as the Indonesian. So for the LGBT is part of the gender identity or the characteristic in the concept of this intersectionality or social inclusion. Of course, we need to consider these aspects when we are looking at our target groups or beneficiaries. But again, it depends on our context, where we are live, whether this culture already accepted or whether it is still on the in the discourse. Pro and cons, of course, there's exist in the country. But again, to be fair, that I must say that in terms for the social inclusion, in the terminology and the terms, the LGBT is a part of components that should be looking at in the concept of the social inclusion.
Thank you, Ms. Yenny. Ms. Karen, do you have any insights on how we can further be inclusive in terms of the LGBT community?
I agree that this is part of the topic of intersectionality, and this is so important in terms of inclusion and diversity. And when I was talking about, we need to always ask which women, which men, that includes LGTB groups, and this is a group that we also want to be making sure that we're including in all of these discussions and activities that we're working on.
Thank you, Ms. Karen. So the concept of LGBTQ is actually loaded with a lot of cultural implications. different cultures and different countries might have a different approach to this one. So like in everything, like what Ms. Miani mentioned, there is no such thing as a one size fits all, or, you know, like a one solution. How we approach this one may be different from one country to the next, but definitely we should look into it. There is no extensive study yet, especially in the ATS region, on the impact of marine protection or climate change on the LGBTQ sector, or what they can contribute or how different their needs are. So this is something that we may have to look into because we don't have enough data on this one. We usually talk about the intersectionality of women in terms of all those concepts, but not really looking at the LGBTQ community. So it's good that somebody opened this up and actually flagged this issue. But again, this is a very loaded cultural question that there is no one size fits all solution. Even in the concepts that we use to describe it or to discuss it is very different. If there's any more question? If there's no more question, I do think that that we have a lot to process for today, that there's a lot of insights for today, but maybe the three things that we have to think about, if you look at inclusivity and equality, actually the three basic things is to look at who are those who make decisions, who are those who will be affected by those decisions, and what are effect of those decisions to them. And if we can be sure that in all those questions we are inclusive and everyone has equal and equitable access to resources, then for sure our interventions would be inclusive. So you can continue to ask questions here, or you can send us an email. But for now, we have to close this event. I would like to invite Mr. Celestino de Cunha Barreto for the closing. Mr. Barreto has more than 20 years of service to the General Directorate of Fisheries and Aquaculture in Timor-Leste. He also co-authored a number of studies and publications in marine protection and planning. So here with us right now is Mr. Barreto. Mr. Barreto, we can't hear you. Mr. Barreto, there's no audio. We can't hear you. Mr. Barreto, there's no audio. We can't hear you. There's no audio, Mr. Barreto. We can't hear you. Mr. Barreto, we can't hear you. We can't hear you. Mr. Barreto, we can't hear you. Mr. Barreto, can you take off your earphones, please? Because we can't hear you. We can't hear you. We can't hear you.
Very much. You can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. Thank you.
Yeah. I think this is the end of our webinar today. Representative of each county, Excellency Mrs. Hekmawani, this morning opening remarks, and then five speakers here, stakeholder, development partners, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank for the ACI 2 regional for trusting us to conclude the webinar on gender mainstreaming and the social inclusion in the fisheries and marine sector in the Arafura Timor Sea region. We all know that gender issue is a very popular issue that we need to think about together on how to human are involved in the taking part in the fisheries and marine development partner participation in this development of sustainable fisheries and marine resource management. For the region, the existence of the RC2 can help and facilitate share experience from one country to another or from the community to other communities in the Arafura Timor Sea region, which can later be enjoyed by the people in this region and can also produce outside the regional Arafura Timor Sea. Arafura Timor Sea has a vision to promote sustainable development of the Arafura Timor Sea region and improve the quality of life of the inhabitants through conservation and the sustainable management of marine coastal ecosystem. Through conservation, through this live webinar, you can decide it how, with whom, and then with what the result. Achieve 2 regional speaker participants from every country, stakeholder, development partners, the implementation of the webinar from morning to afternoon, this afternoon, today. The hope of the kind of the meeting is not only for today, but continues to achieve a common goal. I hereby close the webinar on behalf of ACI today. Thank you very much, all the participants. I think there's many participants here, more than 100. I'm very thank you for all this, follow our live webinar today. Very interesting, and thank you very much for all of us here.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Barreto, for the closing remarks. I hope that our 154 participants have learned a lot this morning. We hope that this webinar will give way to a more inclusive fishery and marine sector in your own countries. So we will be sending your certificates through email. We would also request that you fill out the feedback that will be sent to you through email also. This will help us to further improve our next events. And with that, we would like to invite you to our 3rd collaboration with the East Asia Seas Congress on June 23. It is the regional seminar on biofouling management and invasive aquatic species in the East Asian seas. So we are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Please check the chat box for the link. Do follow us to get more information about our programs and our next event. Chat box, just open it, and do follow us if you want to be involved some more in our future events. So, terima kasih, obrigado, maraming salamat, thank you, samauko, arigatou gozaimashita. Thank you so much, and see you next time.
Program Arafura and Timor Sea Ecosystem Approach Fase 2 adalah skema program 5 tahun antara 2019 sampai 2023 dan merupakan kelanjutan program ETSI tahap pertama.
The ETSI 2 program is a regional initiative focusing on the sustainable management and protection of the Arafura and Timor Seas, which occupy 4 littoral states: Indonesia, East Timor, Papua New Guinea, and Australia. The waters are home to some of the richest marine biodiversities and sea commodities in the world. And in a way, the waters provide an economic lifeline to millions of men and women in the region. The goal is very clear. We want to make sure that our children and grandchildren can still enjoy the wealth and beauty of Arafura and Timor Seas, while at the same time making the best use of the two waters, but in a responsible and sustainable manner.
Saya setuju dengan program ETSI kedua. Pertama, program ETSI 2 mendukung pada peningkatan kesejahteraan masyarakat, yaitu melalui kegiatannya terkait dengan pemberdayaan masyarakat yang akan dilakukan, serta meningkatkan atau menguatkan peran gender, ya, khususnya di lokasi. Yang keduanya, saya melihat peran ETSI juga sangat mendukung upaya penguatan untuk kawasan konservasi, dan yang ketiganya juga berkonsentrasi pada penguatan kelembagaan WPP khususnya di 718.
Dalam pelaksanaannya, program ETSI 2 ini juga akan berusaha mendorong penetapan area perlindungan laut baru sehingga dapat berkontribusi terhadap Sustainable Development Goal Point ke-14, yaitu Life Below Water.
Kalau dari bubu rasa rajungan hidup, kalau jaring itu mati, Bu.
Bubu termasuk yang sangat sedikit tangkapan sampingannya karena dia memang celahnya kecil yang hanya dikhususkan untuk rajungan.
Kalau yang terlalu kecil tuh, dia akan dituang kembali lah ke laut.
Ketawanya di perebusan itu, atau istilahnya kita tahu.
Komposisi pekerjanya itu memang lebih banyak perempuan, itu sekitar 90%.
Sangat membantu ekonomi gitu. Kita kan bisa kerja di sana untuk bantu sehari-hari.
The Arafura and Timor Seas region, or ATS, is unique in terms of its ecology, geography, and socio-political structure. It is rich in resources and home to a vast array of natural wonders. Shared by Australia, Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, and Timor-Leste, this fertile corridor of tropical water connects the Pacific and Indian Oceans. This area provides the peoples of many nations with essential resources, while also stocking the world's oceans with biodiversity. Unfortunately, overfishing, marine and land-based pollution, loss of habitat, and the impacts of climate change create a major threat to most marine life in the region. This underlines the urgent need for a collective regional action and transboundary management of economically important fish species, critical habitats, and marine megafauna. Therefore, in 2006, the ATS Expert Forum developed and submitted a bid to the Global Environment Facility, which came to be known as the Arafura and Timor Seas Ecosystem Action Program, or the initial phase was officially launched in 2010 and created a regional collaboration tasked with finding sustainable solutions for problems affecting coastal and marine resources in the region. In 2019, the second phase of At-Sea, known as At-Sea 2, has been adapted to take the collaboration and coordination in the ATS region a step further through the endorsement and implementation of a 10-year vision for the ATS, known as the Strategic Action Program. It is made up of 3 main components. The first component focuses on strengthening the regional and national collaboration mechanism and establishing a stakeholder partnership forum to facilitate implementation of priority actions and better participatory processes. The second component focuses on developing an ecosystem approach to the fisheries management plan, strengthening the implementation of regional plan of action to combat IUU fishing, assessing marine and land-based pollution, establishing and supporting the management of marine protected areas, and developing a regional plan to enhance marine turtle protection. And the third component focuses on improving the monitoring of the ATS region and sharing knowledge gained from the project. Through the 3 components, At-Sea 2 aims to achieve its main objectives in the ATS to foster sustainable development in the region by improving the quality of life of its inhabitants through restoration, conservation, and sustainable management of marine coastal ecosystems for a better life.
Recording stopped.